The night at America's Got Talent was already filled with energy, bright lights, and excitement, but no one was prepared for what was about to happen next. The audience clapped politely as the announcer introduced the next act. 48 Filipino kids from Cebu. At first, people exchanged confused looks. 48 kids? On the AGT stage? That was something rarely seen. The curtain slowly opened, and suddenly the stage was filled with children standing in perfect rows, wearing simple but traditional-inspired outfits. Their faces were calm, almost serious, as if they carried something much bigger than just a performance. Simon Cowell leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. Heidi Klum smiled gently, expecting something cute. Howie Mandel raised his eyebrows. Sofia Vergara whispered, "Oh my God, that's a lot of kids." The theater buzzed with curiosity, but no one truly understood why these children had traveled all the way from Cebu, Philippines, to stand under the world's brightest spotlight. Their leader, a small boy no older than 12, stepped forward and spoke softly into the microphone. "We came here to sing, not just for ourselves, but for every child back home who dreams." The audience grew quieter. Something about the way he said it felt deeper. It wasn't just an audition. It felt like a mission. The judges asked a few questions. Why so many? Simon finally spoke, his voice sharper than usual. The boy answered respectfully, explaining that they were part of a community choir formed after a devastating typhoon hit their hometown. Many of them had lost homes. Some had lost family members, and singing became the one thing that brought them hope. As the boy spoke, the theater shifted. The laughter and casual excitement faded, replaced by a strange stillness. Simon's face softened for just a moment. The kids stood perfectly still, hands at their sides, eyes focused forward. The stage lights dimmed slightly, and the background screen displayed an image of the ocean waves of Cebu. Peaceful but powerful. A single piano note echoed through the theater. Then another. The children inhaled together, like one single body preparing for something sacred. For a second, there was absolute silence. The kind of silence that feels heavy. The kind that makes even the most distracted person stop moving. People in the audience leaned forward unconsciously. Simon didn't blink. The kids opened their mouths, and the first note they sang was so pure, so haunting, that it felt like time itself paused. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was gentle, but it carried something enormous. The harmony grew slowly, like sunrise breaking through darkness. 48 voices blended together so perfectly that it didn't sound like children anymore. It sounded like something heavenly. The song was emotional, filled with longing and hope, a melody that seemed to tell a story even without words. The audience sat frozen. Some people's mouths were open in disbelief. The sound filled every corner of the theater, and suddenly, the performance didn't feel like a competition. It felt like a moment of history. Simon Cowell's posture changed completely. He was no longer the strict judge searching for flaws. He looked like a man listening to something he didn't know he needed. The kids sang with their whole hearts, their expression serious, their eyes shining under the stage lights. One girl in the front row closed her eyes as she sang, tears slipping down her cheeks, but she didn't stop. The choir's voices rose higher, stronger, building into a powerful wave of sound that made the audience's skin tingle. Even the cameramen seemed stunned, moving more slowly, as if they didn't want to disturb the moment. Sofia Vergara covered her mouth, whispering, "This is unreal." Heidi's eyes were already wet. Howie Mandel sat perfectly still, his usual jokes gone. And Simon Cowell, the man known for brutal honesty, looked completely frozen, as if the music had reached somewhere deep inside him that words could never touch. As the song reached its emotional peak, something extraordinary happened. The children stopped singing for a brief moment, letting the silence speak louder than sound. In that pause, you could hear people breathing. You could hear hearts pounding. The theater was not just quiet, it was reverent. Then, in that silence, a single child began singing alone. A small voice, trembling but brave, carried the melody forward. It was fragile, almost like a whisper, but it held the weight of an entire life behind it. The audience was spellbound. Slowly, the other children joined back in, one by one, like stars appearing in the night sky. The harmony returned. even more powerful than before, swelling into a final chorus that felt like a prayer. People in the crowd began wiping tears openly. Some were shaking their heads, unable to believe what they were hearing. The performance wasn't about perfection. It was about soul. It was about survival. It was about dreams traveling across oceans. Simon Cowell's eyes were locked on the children. For the first time in a long time, he looked speechless. No smirk, no criticism, just pure silence. When the last note finally faded, the children stood still, hands trembling slightly, breathing hard. For 3 full seconds, no one moved. The entire theater was frozen, as if they needed time to return to reality. Then, suddenly, the silence shattered. The audience erupted into the loudest standing ovation of the night. People jumped to their feet, as if pulled by an invisible force. Cheers, screams, applause thundered through the theater. Some people were crying uncontrollably. The children looked stunned, their eyes wide, as if they couldn't believe the reaction. The judges stood too. Heidi clapped with tears streaming down her face. Sophia shouted, "Bravo!" Howie kept saying, "Oh my God, oh my God." And Simon Cowell. Simon was still standing, but he wasn't clapping at first. He simply stared at them, his face full of emotion he didn't know how to show. Finally, he raised his hands and began to clap slowly. The crowd roared even louder. Simon leaned toward his microphone, but for a moment, no words came out. That alone shocked everyone. Simon Cowell, the toughest judge in the world, couldn't speak. The kids held each other's hands, some crying now, overwhelmed by the love pouring from thousands of strangers. Simon finally whispered, "I don't know what to say." The audience gasped. He continued, voice thick. That was not just singing. That was something the world needed to hear. The theater erupted again. The kids from Cebu stood on the biggest stage in America, and in that moment, they weren't just contestants. They were a symbol of hope. Simon looked down the judging table, then back at the children. "You came here from so far away," he said, "and you reminded every person in this room why music exists." Heidi nodded fiercely. Sophia wiped her tears. Howie smiled, still stunned. Simon paused, then added quietly, "This is what dreams are made of." The kids were shaking, barely able to stand. Their leader stepped forward again, voice trembling. "We just wanted to make our families proud." Simon's eyes softened. Then, without warning, Simon reached for the golden buzzer. The audience screamed before he even pressed it. The second his hand slammed down, golden confetti exploded from above like a storm of light. The children screamed, collapsing into each other, crying, laughing, shaking in disbelief. The theater became chaos, the most beautiful kind of chaos. 48 kids from Cebu, once just ordinary children with painful stories, were now standing in golden rain on the world's biggest stage. Cameras captured Simon smiling genuinely, something rarely seen. The moment went viral instantly, not because it was just a performance, but because it was humanity. Hope, courage, unity. That night, the AGT judges didn't just witness talent, they witnessed a miracle. And long after the confetti fell, people would remember the night Simon Cowell froze. The theater fell silent, and 48 Filipino kids from Cebu sang their way into the hearts of the world.